Let's pray. In the name of the one who creates, redeems and sustains us. Amen. Tina Turner, Queensland Rugby League. Love. Well, there's nothing quite like starting a sermon with a string of seemingly random words. But while all three, Tina Turner, Queensland Rugby League, love, while all three may seem not at all connected, well, trust me, there is a connection. Well, there is if you grew up in Queensland and you're of a certain generation. Now, to me, having grown up in the Sunshine State and into a rugby playing family, all three make perfect sense and all three are beautifully connected. Here's how it works. Back in the day, the Brisbane Broncos adopted the song, "You're simply the best, better than all the rest." And it so happened that Tina Turner was in the midst of her world tour and she was in Australia. So she heard about this and she got in touch with the management, the Broncos management. And it all dovetailed into a beautiful, beautiful thing. One thing led to another, which led to a fabulous collaboration. Tina was invited to be guest of honour at a rugby match. She loved it. Everybody loved her. Simply the Best was sung that day with a deafening roar. And the next thing, she'd become the official face of Queensland Rugby. There's a rather fab ad of Tina running along the beach with the Brisbane Broncos and they're playing touch rugby. It's a wonderful, wonderful, great fun ad, big smiles all around. But she's tiny. Tina is tiny when compared to the Broncos all running around beside her. But it's a joyous ad. It was a joyous thing and it became the stuff of legend. And if Tina Turner wasn't already firmly embedded into Queensland hearts, well, she certainly was after playing rugby with the Broncos on the beach to the sounds of Simply the Best in the soundtrack. It was love. Love for Tina, love of the game, love of two wonderful things coming together. But to use another of her songs when we think of our reading today, what's love got to do with it when it comes to 1 Corinthians chapter 13? Well, everything. Love is simply the best way forward, the most excellent way. Last week we heard from John chapter 14 and I remarked that it was a passage that was often associated with funerals. Now, our reading for this time of worship is also one that's well known from life events. This time, weddings. It's most often heard at weddings, which, when you know the background to this reading, makes it quite an interesting choice. When you know the reason why there was more than just one letter to the Corinthians, you kind of think, what's that really telling us about the relationship that we've all come to celebrate while wearing our best hats? So these Corinthians, what was the deal? Well, bless their hearts, the folk in the church at Corinth were really making a bit of a hash of things. They'd become quite fractious, they were argumentative, an arrogant and pushy lot. Well, some of them. They'd broken up into factions, they quarrelled over who was the most godly, and you can almost hear their voices coming through the words of Paul's letters. I'm simply the best. No, I'm better. Hey, I'm more humble. They even fell out over how to share in the love feast that is communion. Some were busy fighting for power. They wanted the best seats in the house. They wanted to be honoured and were ready to dismiss other members of the community as lesser, as unimportant. So overall, the church in Corinth was basically a mess. And it fell to Paul, who had planted the church in Corinth, to try and to clear it up, to clean up this mess. It's interesting when you look at this particular letter. You find chapter 13 wedged between two chapters that talk about spiritual gifts and roles in the church. Paul's been making the point in chapter 12 that there are as many gifts as there are people within the church. No one person has every gift, and no one person is more important than the other. Each is different. Each has their own distinctive part to play. And while unique, while different, yet all are one, because what unites them is Jesus. They are his living stones. They are his body with a variety of gifts. But their problem was they got so caught up in which gifts were the best, or with trying to grab as many gifts as they could to claim spiritual superiority, as if they were like collecting cards, that they basically missed the whole point. And so, to make the point, at the end of chapter 12, Paul finishes with, "And now I will show you the most excellent way," and then launches into this great passage on love: what it is, what it isn't, what it does, what it doesn't. For Paul, love is less a thing and it's more of an action. It's a verb, a word that has to work for its living. And right from the get-go in this chapter, Paul makes it absolutely clear that without love, everything that you have, everything that you can do is worth nothing. If your life is not totally grounded upon love, if love is not the motivation for all that you are and all that you do, well, really, it's all just a little bit pointless. He sets out some extreme examples. You could have all of the gifts. You could do all these astonishing things. You could move mountains. You could, if you wanted to, burn your body in the flames. I mean, he chooses quite extreme examples here. Whatever you choose, you could do all of these things. But if these actions are entirely about you, well, then you're a little bit like Oscar Wilde's cynic, who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. How do we measure the value of a person, of a gift, of anything? If we use purely monetary value, well, then how come the first thing that we're inclined to grab in case of a house fire is a photograph album or a memento, a particular keepsake? What price memories or connections with friends or families or communities? Love. Love is the true measure of all things. At the beginning of the movie Love Actually, which we saw a snippet of in that first clip, you have scenes of different people meeting one another at Heathrow Airport. Families, lovers, friends. And as we are shown all of these people meeting and greeting one another, there's a voiceover pondering the nature of love. And at one point, the person speaking says, "Whenever I get gloomy at the state of the world, I think about the arrivals gate at Heathrow Airport. General opinions starting to make out that we're living in a world of hatred and greed. But I don't see that. It seems to me that love is everywhere. Often it's not particularly dignified or newsworthy, but it's always there. Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, husbands and wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, old friends. When the planes hit the Twin Towers, as far as I know, none of the phone calls from the people on board were messages of hate or revenge. They were all messages of love. If you look for it, I've got a sneaky feeling you'll find that love actually is all around." It's a great, great quote. Love is all around. God created everything in love, for God is love. God is love in action in its purest form. The mystic Julian of Norwich, who lived through the Black Death, recounts her visions in her work, the book Revelations of Divine Love. In one of her visions, having asked God questions on why there was evil and suffering in the world, God responds to her saying, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." How, though, can this be? Well, Julian also observes that there is a force of love moving through the universe that holds us fast and will never let us go. All shall be well, for God's love holds us fast. God is love. God created in love. We were created through love to love. For we were made in God's image. We love because God loved us first. In Jesus, God showed us that the most excellent way to live is what Paul talks of, to live in love. Jesus shows us what love in action looks like. Love is not wishy-washy, mushy stuff. Love has a backbone. It stays the course. It never fails. Love is the foundation upon which we build our lives and from which we live our lives. For God is love, and so we build on him. And as Paul ends what is essentially a great poem on the nature of love, he begins the next chapter with these words: follow the way of love. What's love got to do with it? Everything. May that be our motivation as we follow the way of love, created by the God who loves us and holds us fast and who never lets us go. Amen. And now let's watch the third of our clips, thinking about love. And this is very much about love in action, love as the basis for social justice. If each one of us is created by God and made in God's image, and if Jesus has called us to love one another, so our love extends to reaching out to those within society who have been pushed down by the powerful. So let's watch love in action as seen through the words of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. For God is love, and love always seeks to raise up and not to break down.